All right, Nathaniel, I'm gonna cut to the chase. I've watched a shit ton of your content. I'm super into OBEs, and usually it's you hear about love and light. You know, concentrate on love, the heart center. You know, do the hemi sync and get into a higher frequency, right, to establish an out of body state. But it was actually Satan who kind of threw you out of body, dude. Like that kind of contradicts the whole thing. So, like, what is it about the energy of Satan that launched you out of your body?
That's amazing. What a great intro. So this does require a little bit of context building, I would say. Um, it's interesting that you pulled out the Satan part because that's the part that hasn't stuck with me as much as, you know, the conclusion from it. So quick little story for your
I
people.
love it. Let's do it.
I'm in high school hanging out with my small little group of friends, the only friends that I had, and they were the people who wanted to ask big, weird questions like me and learn about the universe and consciousness and history and conspiracies and whatever else it might be. And we were in the season of life where we had recently learned about, you know, David Icke and, you know, the potential for interdimensional reptilians and, you know, whatever, entities that want to devour my soul or control me and all this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
No big deal. Didn't think too much about it, honestly, but because we were getting into so much crazy stuff. But I was walking home from my buddy's house that night, and it was probably, I don't know, midnight, 1 in the morning. I had a flat tire on my bike, so I was just kind of walking my bike down the street. It's like a 20-minute walk. I've done it all the time. But for whatever reason, I had this kind of boogeyman feeling where the hair on my neck was standing up. I just felt creeped out, like somebody was watching me or following me. I kept having to turn around and check. And at one point, I set the bike down. I booked backwards like two houses. I looked behind bushes. I had to like rationalize somehow, like calm down my normal brain and just be like, dude, get over it. Like nothing's happening. And even after all that checking, it almost like the feeling got stronger and stronger. So then it finally occurred to me, maybe what I'm feeling right now is one of these entities or one of these freaking interdimensional soul-sucking reptilians or
The
whatever it
Prince
is.
of
I just learned
Darkness.
about them.
Yeah.
So if I know about them, they must know about me now, and maybe they're coming to check me out or, you know, something. And then you start kind of spiraling, and I'm kind of thinking worst case scenario, and that included thoughts like, well, if it was, I don't know how to traverse dimensions. So if I am meeting some crazy entity right now, it's probably got me because I have no idea what I would even do about it or if I can do anything about it. And then I kept thinking, well, what if this being that I'm meeting is really bad, like one of the top dogs? And it just kept getting worse and worse until I thought, what if I'm meeting like evil itself? What if this is Satan? What if this is the devil? What if I'm meeting like the epitome of evil kind of pinpointed down and focused right at me, about to destroy everything that I know? And then a thought showed up. And I say it that way because I didn't, you know, I wasn't looking for it necessarily, but a thought showed up and said something to the effect of, well, if you are currently interacting with the most evil entity that could ever possibly exist, even that entity is part of this oneness stuff that you've also been learning about lately. And that was an interesting spin on this idea. And yeah, around the exact same time, I was reading another book by this guy, Bernie Glassman, called The Infinite Circle, about, he's like kind of unpacking the Heart Sutras and Zen Buddhism and talks about infinity and things from this very kind of very heartfelt space. And so that was really stuck with me. And of course, you know, everyone wants a nice little spiritual narrative where everything's one and perfect and it's all love or whatever it
Hmm.
is. And that still kind of seems like that's pretty relevant. But that thought shows up and I realize, holy shit, like even if I'm literally face to face right now with evil itself, that evil is just as much one with God or with the entirety of everything as I am. Like we actually have equal footing. We're both equally one with everything, which put us on the exact same playing field. So I thought that, and that made sense. So then I kind of and then I believed it. It just made sense. And then I like to say I knew it with a G, as in like gnosis, like a noetic experience, and I knew that was true, regardless of if I was interacting with anything. Just that concept, that philosophy showed up in my awareness. It's like, wow, even evil itself is also part of this oneness thing. And as soon as I knew that, I had some form of it was basically like a full body orgasm. I had this energy shoot up from the base of my spine. It felt like it was from like below my gonads, like this energy that kind of bubbled up, and then it shot up my spine through a tube that was like this big and shot this fluid out the top of my head. At this point, I'm basically out of body because I'm watching it third person, but also like in it, kind of like back and forth, or both at the same time. It shoots like 20, 30 feet up in the air. This fluid that was basically like a semen like fluid, or like egg yolks. It was like this slimy, thick fluid, and it shoots up in the air like a geyser, falls back down, lands on my body, and drips down and coats my entire body. And while that's happening, I'm pretty sure I was just standing in the street, like convulsing, shaking like this. And while that's happening, I'm in pure oneness. I was in bliss. It was a combination of like bliss slash empty slash nothingness. But mostly a very lovely feeling. Zero thoughts, no ego, no nothing. Just kind of like just present in this experience. It probably lasted for maybe a couple minutes, and in those moments it feels like forever, but it couldn't have been super long. And the very first thought that finally started to show back up was, holy shit, I can't wait to tell my buddy Charles about this tomorrow. And as soon as I have that thought, the entire experience really rapidly just starts going down. Like someone's just turning the dial. But it also had this sense of like, no, wrong thought. Like, that's not what we need right now. I'm just going to turn this off for you. And I was like, okay, wait, I won't tell Charles. I don't need to tell anybody. This is just for me right now. This is just whatever. Maybe this is some thing that I need to hold on. And it was like, okay. And it turned it back up. And then I sunk back into the space, and I was like, okay. And I'm not thinking again, and I'm just there. And then it starts to come back down, or not come back down, but like these thoughts are trying to make their way into the space. It felt like it was my ego trying to like grab onto something. And then the next one was like, something like, is something special happening to me? Like, am I special? Is this enlightenment?
Am I Christ? Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as I start thinking that, it starts coming out real fast. I said, okay, whoa. At that point I got it. Like, I don't need any of those kinds of thoughts. And it's okay for me to just be with this and be present with it. And it would come back up. So I spent the rest of the walk, probably took me 2 hours to walk home instead of the typical 20 minutes. Because every few moments I'm like stopping and kind of assessing this gauge and letting myself either get totally blissed out, or I start to come back to earth a little bit and keep walking while just kind of like feeling into what the hell just happened. And I don't even remember how I got to sleep that night, or if I did. But the very next morning, I hop out of bed and jump right on the floor and sit cross my legs, sit in a lotus position, and I'm like, all right, let's do it again. And I get this like scene from a movie where it's just like wah, wah, like this dud feeling, I was given that signal where it was almost laughing at me, and it was like, bro, I appreciate it, but that's not how this works. Like,
Wow.
You don't just get to turn it on. I appreciate the enthusiasm. It was also a feminine feeling too, the sort of like and this is before I knew anything about Kundalini Awakening, which very consistently seems to have a serpentine / feminine feeling to it. I'm sure some people have, it's different, but that's what it seems to be. And then for the next 6 months or so, every night as I tried to fall asleep, and your ego kind of has to shut off in order to fall asleep. That's why most people stay up, because they keep thinking about themselves and their life and their trauma. So my ego would start to dissipate, and I would blast off again, and I'd be like convulsing in my bed and having these like bliss waves show up. And after about 6 months, I finally realized I need to sleep. So let me try to talk to this thing or somehow relate to it. And my first conversation with it was kind of like, hey, can we just go to sleep? I'd like to not have to do this every night. And something kind of clicked. And then that eventually turned into this sort of, are you familiar with human design?
Very little.
A little bit.
Not
Okay.
not an expert.
Well, the type that I am, and I think this is true for a lot of people, ultimately, I'm not a big personality type person, but they have this notion in it for a generator where you have your uh-huh or uh-uh, right?
Mm.
It's like life just gives you everything and you're responding with a yes or a no. That's your only job. It's like, be in your discernment, be clear, but it comes from your gut, and it comes from that like deep knowing versus like thinking about it and analyzing it. So after a few months after this experience, I started to have this very visceral yes or no response in my body, where I'd either have like a very little mini undulation in my spine, or I'd literally feel myself leaning forward towards something or leaning back. And I kind of walked away from that experience with the interpretation that I basically woke something up in my system that allowed me to finally have like a tangible experience of my own intuition, or
Mm.
my own ability to have discernment, which was kind of the main takeaway from it, which is a little different than the Satan part. But I love that you open up like that because it's good clickbait.
Yeah, dude. It's so, it's wild. I love the Gnostic viewpoint too, the G.
Right.
Maybe it's Sophia, the feminine, right? That is
Oh yeah, that's been a big thing in my life too over
well,
the last,
before we dive down, you're 16 when this happens, right?
yeah,
Like,
16 or
so
17. Yeah.
were you sexually active? Did you know what like an orgasm felt like?
Not from a woman, but yeah, or not from another person, and not from
So
anybody.
like this is like totally like I don't know, like 16 having this like orgasmic experience of like exploding. Like was it you talk about this fluid coming out of the top of your head? Was it like energetic fluid or like was it physical? Like I mean I'm
It
trying to think like
felt
physical.
physical,
Yeah.
even though, I have stuff in there. So it wasn't like a literal sensation as if it would have to like move around my organs and stuff. So it was almost like I was having, you could almost see it as like an energetic overlay, but I was having the physical sensations of it. Similar to like in a dream, you can kind of have whatever kind of sensations and it doesn't have to play by the normal rules.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Did
I
you
mean,
see when you came out of the body, did you see the entity that was there?
no, nothing
No.
like, yeah.
And when you came
I almost get the impression now that the it's possible nothing was even there, but and maybe it was, something as simple as the temperature of the wind on the back of my neck that triggered a biological fear response that I then needed to make sense of, but that brought me to an aspect of my psyche that allowed some dots to connect. And it really could be that simple. And I do think a lot of things are that simple in that case. Or, the other ways to think about this are just so complex and impossible to
sure.
prove. But it's interesting that I've never had any particular, um, yeah, like confirmation or any other experience. I've had a lot of lucid dream work where things to the effect of, like the black blob that's taking over the planet, and the only way to defeat it is I have to jump into it and destroy myself.
Mm.
That type of archetype has shown up before, as far as like surrendering to some big evil power or something like that. But that is interesting. Yeah. And the out of body part, I didn't know anything about OBEs then. So I didn't really walk away with that experience too. I think it wasn't until the last podcast I did with Segi that I think you first heard me on, or
Hmm.
some comments was like, was this guy convulsing or was he just in the vibrational stage?
Oh, yeah.
Realize it, and I was like, oh shit, because I've experienced that more recently, and it felt pretty similar. Um,
What do you think that is though? Like the vibration? Is it like the pineal gland activating?
that's a good question. I mean, so what trips me out with all these questions and all this stuff, because of all the lucid dreaming work that I do, I've been in dreams that feel more real than this, or just as real, and then it's still none of the rules have to make sense. Right. So it's like the vibration it can just be a matter of perception. Like any little experience, anything can just be something that kind of gets projected from your brain or in your brain, or I mean, it's not in your brain, but um, it seems like it's also a way that we have to, through all this OBE research in the Monroe Institute, which teaches me a lot about this stuff, we have to perceive it in a way that we can grok somehow. Like, we have to be able to comprehend it. So the idea of something as complex as your literal frequency shifting, we might just go, oh, it kind of feels like I'm going like this, because we have to experience something similar to how, like, Bob Monroe will go meet these beings, and even the beings itself will say, I'm not actually a being. I'm kind of, the best term might be like a system of energy, but you have to experience me as something to relate to for you to even be able to talk to me or get information of it, because of the way your brain works.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like the
So,
whole Lush idea. It was presented to him, that idea or concept, as a farm, because he has a background in farming as a kid.
right.
And, I did also go down that path of David Icke and the reptilians and Prison Planet and all the
Right.
things. It makes you want to jump off a freaking bridge, dude. It's like so depressing.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, you're born into this system, and it feels like a prison planet. Like, you have to pay for things. Like, you have, like,
Yeah.
we're born here, and it's everything. I don't get it. We have to. There's a payment. You have to pay energetically, physically, monetarily, whatever. There's a cost of being here. It almost feels like a prison. So, like, when you started learning about these philosophies, when you had that experience, like out of body experience, like, what is the key to freedom? Like, what is the actual key? Is it the surrendering to that concept, the loving of Satan, knowing that it is a part aspect of yourself, whether that's spiritual, psychic, like intrapsychic, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
how did you get over that concept of, like, this being a prison, if you did?
Yeah. No, I definitely, truthfully, I actually never adopted it, which I'm very
Mm,
grateful for. I've always kind of, it's been a very relevant sidecar to my journey. I think I said this on the Segi show too, that it's more important to me that we literally are on a prison planet physically, like, regardless of if it's some archon, multi-dimensional demiurge, yada yada. It's like, yeah, like, life on planet Earth for physical people, at least right now, is absolutely brutal. There's over 1 billion people who don't have access to clean drinking water, or toiletries, or normal food, or anything. So that's where my brain has always gone. Like, how do we just solve? I don't even need it to be a big spiritual game. It's very clear that there is shit we need to handle here and now. And then, even in that sense, I remember you just reminded me, actually, similarly around that time, I was sitting on a balcony looking down at the neighborhood and seeing, like, trash in the streets. And then the oneness thing hit me again. I was like, well, wait, that's me. Like, why am I letting the street be full of trash? If this is all just one thing and I'm the one aware of it right now, then it's my choice whether I'm picking it up or not. Right. So it's like,
sure.
that's more where it started to adopt for me. And also, at the same time, at 16, 17, I'm learning about whatever you want to call the Illuminati and the Cabal and the secret societies and all the actual physical, tangible infrastructure of how we have the sort of prison planet that we do have. And none of it had yet crossed the threshold to, it was clear that it's always a sort of spiritual game, just based on the nature of the occultism baked into all these things. But it's only in the last maybe 6 or 7 years where this kind of larger conceptual spiritual warfare idea is more relevant. But even that, I could argue, is a very helpful psyop, for lack of a better term, or distraction,
Mm,
is you can sit in your chair on your computer and think all day about concepts and still need to, like, close an actual loop with someone in your real life, and it doesn't do
yeah.
anything towards that.
Oh man, yeah,
And
for
your
sure.
kitchen's still a mess,
Yeah.
and you still haven't forgiven so and so from 10 years ago. It's like, I'm much more interested in the reality of things. And I would argue that so much of this stuff is so subjective. I'm currently running with the setup that, everybody's model of reality is true, is real.
So like constructivist, like a constructivist type of
Yeah,
philosophy where everyone
like we
makes
know
their own
that through
reality.
NDEs, it's very clear that you're gonna experience what is relevant to you and what makes sense for you.
Hmm.
Um, and I think someone who looks at the world and can only see this unwinnable, which is a big distinction that I think that's like the black pill version of awakening, right? Where you get so overwhelmed that there's no hope left. And I think that's completely subjective and is a
Did you
matter.
lose hope when you're out of body? Like when you were 16 years old? I mean, that's a heavy like reality dose of like I'm out. I'm looking at my body in the third person, right? Like you're seeing this physical
Yeah.
body
I
having this visceral reaction to this.
I think I had a unique preparation because I'd been lucid dreaming since I was 8. So I had already experienced a lot of weird and wacky stuff at that point.
Mm.
Even if it's just, like helping aliens defeat this creatures on some other planet or something. And then I wake up and I'm like, whoa, I know that was a dream, but I just did that. Like I can remember that alien's face just as much as I remember my friend's face that I saw yesterday. So in this moment, they're equally memories, which means they're both things I did. They're both experiences I had. So yeah, it didn't really, didn't throw me off that much. If anything, it just opened me up it felt like an invitation to be more connected to things I guess you don't typically see. Um, and again, gave me this connection to my intuition. It's what started an actual meditation practice because I want to like go inward and
Mhm.
explore what the hell's going on. And interestingly enough, I don't remember the timeline. It had to have been after this, but that same book I was reading, and maybe I didn't read the book until after this, and I learned about oneness from something else. But this Zen Buddhism book, he's basically unpacking these heart sutras, and he talks about this word maha. And he said, it's which is interesting that it's so popular now. So I have a deep connection with this word. My old YouTube channel was called Maha No Me, and I was like, I have this whole connection with that. And now it's a big political thing, but it means the great, basically. So you'll see different gods and deities called Maha something, Maha Krishna, Maha whatever. But in this book, he says Maha is defined as something with no inside and no outside.
Mhm.
So I'm sitting there, literally at band practice with my buddies, sitting on the couch. We're like waiting for somebody to show up. I'm reading this book, and I'm like, "What the hell has no inside and no outside?" And I'm like looking for it, and then I realized this does the whole this, and I had the same little
It
like
shot
a
back
mini
out, huh?
blast off just from that notion. Um, which rocked me to realize like I could read a word and think about something for a little bit and almost mimic that experience that I had.
That's wild, dude. What is that? Like a cheat code or something? Like a key almost?
So, well, it gets even crazier, and you might have heard me say this already too. This was probably 4 or 5 years later. I'm like 21, and I'm reading a book by David Data, and who's awesome. He has a book called Way of the Superior Man, which you would love if you haven't read it, with your
Mhm.
superior self.
Right.
Brand. He's a badass. So he has this other book called Blue Truth, where it's kind of just a lot of philosophy and talking about life and death and sex and love and all this stuff. And he has a quote in there that says, "This moment is only as open as you are willing to be." And that kind of sounds kind of cool. Feels kind of badass. Like, whoa, like I'm in charge of how I'm experiencing this moment. And that makes a lot of sense in little moments where you're like, oh, I'm about to walk into a party and like, am I feeling overwhelmed or intimidated or confident? And I'm about to go experience the party based on how open I am, right, to whatever experience I want to have. So that makes a lot of sense. But I took it in this other way, which was, okay, how open can we get? What does that even mean to be open? So I'm sitting on the couch. I set the book down. I sit up in the couch a little bit. I think go lotus pose, and I think I even like sat in a full little meditation stance. And I claimed to the universe. I said, "Okay, universe, let's do fully open, whatever fully open is." And I just said it in that one line. I'm like, I set up. I'm like, all right, let's do fully open. And as soon as I said that, I was instantly a trillion miles away, going a trillion miles an hour, like a rock, like head first, like a rocket, just fucking shooting through some portal. And it scared the shit out of me, and I
I
jumped
bet.
right back to my body in a matter of, a second or two.
Wow. What
But
does it
just
feel
the command
like going
itself,
through a portal? Like, what does it feel like when you're going through a portal? Like, you know, what I mean? At light speed.
and honestly, this is so funny. It reminded me of uh, maybe you've seen. There's this cartoon from a long time ago called Rockadoodle
No.
about this like Elvis looking like rooster who sings and all this
Oh
shit,
yes, I remember this.
right?
Yeah, now I
And
remember
there's
this.
like
Yeah.
he basically saves the world by he like turns into this little comet, and it's just his head with like a trail going, and he like flies around the world and makes the sun come up or something like that. But that was my first thing it reminded me of, because it felt like I didn't have a body, but my awareness felt like it was at the end of this point, and that point was the head of the comet, and I was just going, and it felt like I was going straight up. It almost And again, this is where this gets tricky, because once you see movies and things, and then you remember, like, it almost, I think of the Loki and Thor scene where they're going through the Bifrost, and it's kind of like
Mhm.
this, like, uh, what's that called? Yeah, just kind of like rainbow metallic looking, the abalone. It looks like abalone shells kind of thing. But again, that could just be now me trying to remember this and remember all these other things that I've seen. But that's basically what it felt like. But the notion of, I knew I was going faster than the speed of light. Like, I knew it was beyond any calculation or any possible thing. And I guess that makes sense if fully
Yeah.
open is
Well,
gonna.
could you go anywhere that you wanted to go? Did you have like full autonomy of your travel?
No, so no, this was a one-off, just straight up. Like, I wasn't even, again, I had no, even still at that point, going out of body was not a reference point. It was not like something I was practicing. It wasn't something I was studying. I was actually much more on like an inward thing, which apparently, some people would argue that's the same thing. But as far as just like meditation and stillness and going inward versus like exploring or going to another dimension, even though I do that in my dreams a lot, but even then, I was still treating my dreams like dreams versus potentially other actual places or other, you know, things like that. But that one, I was going so fast and it was so quick. Like, if you could imagine snapping your fingers and then you're going a trillion miles an hour, probably be a little uncomfortable. You'd probably be a little freaked out, or even just putting you into one of those like multiple G-force planes in an instant, like an actual real experience. It's still, the contrast is so massive. If you
Yeah.
could hit the eject button, you're going to hit it.
What's wild though, because like you're out of your body, you don't have any like sense interpretation of data around your environment. Like, how are you feeling in this soul form or light form or information form? Like, how do you feel uncomfortable? You know what I mean?
It could have just been the shock of it, the shock
Mm.
value, the newness. I mean, people go out of body all the time, and you experience sensations more vividly than here. Um,
Really?
I don't hear people talking so much about the pain side of it, but more the pleasure side of it. Like, things will taste really powerful, or you can like smell grass, and it'll smell like the
Mm.
most beautiful thing you've ever smelled. And so all the senses are still there, and all of your, um, and again, there's levels to this, because I learned this through lucid dreaming. There's layers of lucidity where you can be fully lucid, God mode, where you can create universes. And then there's also lucid where you're just like going through the dream, and it's like a high school reenactment, and you kind of know it's a dream, so you're not like worried about anything, but you don't
Yeah.
control anything, right? You're still lucid. You're still like maybe thinking about it as if like, dude, this is such a crazy dream. Wow, I'm going to tell my wife about this tomorrow or whatever, and you're just kind of in it. But
Yeah.
there's a spectrum of that. So I get the sense there's something similar with OBEs, where a lot of people will have OBs and not even realize it, where they might just have a dream where they're in their room, but everything's really fuzzy and it's all
Yeah.
grayed out and you can't see that well. So it's like you're OBE, but your awareness is kind of dimmed, or as far as where you're at on the spectrum. So if I would have blasted off like that and been more lucid, I could have probably harnessed it. But the fact that I wasn't even planning on leaving my body, let alone going so fast or doing anything, I thought maybe I would have had the undulations happen or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was looking for a result, which is probably why it worked so well too.
Mm. When did you start lucid dreaming?
When I was 8.
When you were 8? Wow. So how did you, like, you're going to these different realities as a child, 8 years old? Like my daughter is getting ready to turn 7. Like what impact did it have on you coming back here and living in this world?
Quite a bit, honestly. I would there'd be times where I'd wake up from a dream and I'd start journaling about it, and then I'd have to walk to school, and I'd be still writing about it while I'm walking. I would sit outside the class, the bell rings, we should be in class, and I don't care anymore. I'm like, I mean, I never cared about school, but it was a good excuse. It's like, this is way more interesting. Like, I was on this planet, we built this ship, and we were collecting all these different creatures and trying to rehabilitate them in this like place that we made. And I met this guy and these people, and I missed them. And where did they go? And it felt so real. I like had to really be with it. And that was massive for me. I never really, it took me a while. It wasn't until I was in like junior high when I realized like I can try to influence what dreams I may have. So but from age like 8 to 13 or so, it was just kind of like, oh, I'm going to bed. Like how exciting, like anything could happen. I might do some crazy shit. And also by the time, I think I was 8 or 9, I had already learned how to wake myself up
Hmm.
from nightmares and stuff, which was great. Or even just, unpleasant experience or something starting to feel kind of creepy. Let's just get out of here. And then that turned fun because I realized I could wake myself up by blinking my eyes in the dream really fast and like hard, like you're being dramatic about it. And then I'd wake up and my physical eyes were doing that. So that clicked something where I'm like, oh, so it's like it is me in there, and there's some sort of feedback loop. I've even had dreams where I'll open my eyes in the or excuse me, my eyes will be open in the dream, and then I'll open my physical eyes and I'm looking at my room, and I close my eyes again and I'm right back where I was in the dream.
Wow.
So
So
sometimes
complete
there's,
control of that, huh?
yeah, yeah. But it got to the point where I would even stuff, I remember getting in trouble a couple times where, because I'd have to have my chores done before I can go hang out with my friends. And I'd call my dad after school and be like, hey, I'm going over to Jeff's house. And don't worry, I already did X, Y, or Z. And then he'd call me super pissed because I didn't. But I genuinely thought I did because I had a dream that I did the night
No
before.
shit.
Like I absolutely was certain that I did. And he'd be mad at me. I'm like, Dad, what are you talking about? And he'd be like, come home right now.
I did it.
I'm like, holy shit. And I couldn't like explain that to him or anything. So
Did you ever
that,
get lost in the dream, like kind of like Inception, where you kept going to different layers? Because like Joe McMoneagle
right.
talks about that, where he would wake up out of a dream and like his psyche maybe became too fractured to where he thought he was in waking reality, to your point, right? And he wasn't. He was still in the dream, and like it freaked him out because like how many times do you have to wake up out of the dream before you return to like fundamental reality? Have you ever gotten lost?
I, you know, I really appreciate these questions, man, because I don't always
A little weird.
reflect. Well, I don't always reflect from the angle, like I wouldn't think to ask myself that, but also because I don't think I really have. Like I'm actually
Mhm.
real. You just helped me realize, like, man, I've been pretty blessed in my, I can think of maybe 2 or 3 dreams I've even had in my life, and this is when I was way younger, where I was worried I'd never get out of it, right? Where it's like,
What were they?
it's
What were
just
you
a
doing?
feeling. It's just this feeling of like, it was like snowy. We're in this cabin and there's some evil lady, and it's like, oh, is it gonna be like this forever? Like sometimes you take drugs and you hit a little moment where you're like, oh shit, am I like stuck here like this? So it's reminiscent of that. I've had plenty of dreams where you wake up in the bed you're sleeping in, and then you get up and realize you're still dreaming. But I actually take advantage of those because that typically for me happens closer to the morning, where you're a bit more in like a theta state that you can harness. So those are actually really good times to get more lucid, or to leave your body or go to some other place, because you're kind of in a, most people dream every night, and you essentially project this sort of bubble just of your own psyche that you are kind of swimming around in. And that's why most dreams, and the purpose of dreaming itself, is to integrate your psyche. Every single night, you're having dreams that are helping you, kind of like digest your life experiences from many different layers. And so it's great that you can kind of keep into your own thing. And that's why usually it's like it's your high school or where you grew up or places that are familiar or this or that. And then every once in a while you do some crazy, wacky shit. Most people also forget, though, that like you could have watched a movie a month ago that is now triggering some scene you're in tonight.
Mm.
And then we think it's some big crazy thing. It's like, no, you watched some crazy movie, like, and it gets in there. But yeah, I think for whatever reason, by starting so young and having so much agency in my dreams, I think, yeah, just my experience or even the notion of like, could I get stuck or am I too far in or anything like that has never felt like an issue, because I've just always felt really in control of it, I guess.
Mm. It's so wild that the government was like at the Monroe Institute doing these studies, like it's like you think about MK Ultra almost, and like how they were fragmenting, people's psyches and disassociating from reality. Maybe they were experiencing those types similar realities that you were in dreams
Mm-hmm.
almost, right? Like Tom Campbell talks about dream states as being like, one player games. I don't know if you know Tom Campbell.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And like the people that you're interacting with in your dream are like NPCs or whatever you call them, non-player
Mm-hmm.
characters. Like when you go into your dreams, like are they actual, do you think they're actual beings or do you think they're like NPCs?
Well, so kind of like what I was saying, most of the time you're in your own bubble. So essentially everything is an NPC in there, but that doesn't mean other beings can't get into your bubble, right? So that's definitely seems to be the case. But I
Well, how
do
do you
think
know when you're surrounded by other beings, like sentient beings? I guess you don't know, right? Is there a way to
it can
tell?
be hard to tell. You definitely you have to look them in the eyes. Makes a big difference. And you know, if you've ever looked at someone in the eye, you like eye gaze with a human being, it's a very obvious experience that like you're in there too. Like that there's like the same thing that animates you is animating that, and there's a connection there. Or if you try to look at someone in the eyes who's like way too drunk or something, you can tell
Yeah.
they're not there all the
Or a
way.
boxer who's getting ready to get knocked out, right? Like they're
Sure,
not there.
sure. Yeah, totally. You can, yeah. It's actually I think a really important dream practice is to build relationship and find out what you can get out of these people. And most people, when they go lucid, they just try to tell people they're in a dream, and NPCs can't understand that at all because they're just like, oh, sure, okay, yeah. What do you say? Like, it's this very Sims like kind of dumb thing where you find out like, oh, this I can't really get anything out of this. Um, but there's absolutely moments, and again, I can't prove that it's not just my own self projecting itself into some like ancient looking Mayan shaman lady who's like feels different than the NPCs and is off. That could just be my own thing. That's fine. I'm not too like worried about whether it's just me or not because the wisdom's the wisdom, and the feel to wake up with that feeling is the value to me, where it's like,
Mm.
holy shit, like I just felt very seen by a being that felt infinitely wiser than me. So whether that was real or not, or me or not, I still feel that way right now. So I'm going to walk into the rest of my day feeling like what a special feeling to have.
Sure.
So
That's
that's
wild.
been it mostly for me. And then every once in a while, a few other hacks. Ask them if they know Jesus is a good one.
Why is
But
that? Like, what does that do?
well, if they're not on your team, they will. I mean, because everyone's on Jesus's team, regardless of you know religion and dogma and all that kind of stuff. Like just that frequency, it seems to be the best kind of bear repellent for any and all dream pests.
Really?
Yeah, and that's also been shown. I mean, that's shown in a lot of research, a lot of content, and people talking about this stuff. I'll just go if I see some being. It's usually I'll be calling for dream guides to show up. Like I'll be in a dream and I'm like, hey, who wants to come connect with me? And every once in a while, the first one that shows up, they'll just feel like a regular person. Like there's nothing like I just don't notice anything. So I'm nonchalant and I just walk up to shake their hand. I'm like, hey, nice to meet you. What do you think about Jesus Christ? I just like throw that right in their face. And, you know, I mean, I've done this maybe like a dozen times, and probably 8 or 9 times they just kind of, and they turn into a little like squeamy little thing and they fly off. So again,
Oh
that
my
could just be me creating that little scene in my head because I heard about it, or because, you know, it makes sense. But it seems like a good rule, because it's really just about, we do live in what seems like a very free will oriented universe. I also like the term that free will is earned, right? So if you can absolutely put yourself in a position where you don't have access to your will, right? If you're just super tired and super hungry, you already lost most of it. And if you're horny and have to pee, you're basically controlled by all kinds of other things and not yourself. But in this space, it's like these beings need our permission in a way to interact with us on certain levels. And if they're not beings and it's just your own psyche, then you would have your own sort of firewall system for that too, where you're not just going to make yourself go crazy. There's got to be some sort of delineation there.
How long did it take you to figure that out? Like, how many interactions did you have with entities before you were like, hey man, I need to start like discerning who I'm speaking with? Like, what information were they giving you? Was it like throwing you off your path? Was it like, I don't know. Cause I feel like everyone's so excited about getting in the out of body state that they're like, to your point, going up to all of these different entities. And I don't know if every entity that you meet in the out of body state has your best interest at heart, right? Like, I feel like there's trickster energies and things like that that are trying to throw you off for whatever reason. And I don't know why. Maybe they're just tricksters, the archetype. But like, how long did it take you to develop that like knowledge or wisdom?
That's a good question. I think my childhood dream experiences were so helpful in handling nightmares that by the time I was even thinking about this stuff, it was less intimidating to be like, oh, I might run into some bad boy. And the whole blast off experience with the Satan thing, that made a big difference.
I mean, Satan's the one that got you out of body, dude. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's the thing that really rocked me, was like, oh, the thing I should be the most afraid of is the thing that offered me possibly the most direct experience of like reality or God or whatever that I've maybe ever had. So that's kind of an interesting starting point. I also lived on a property in 2010 or 11 where they used to host a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies. And so there was a lot of interesting energy on the property, and like ghosts and entities was kind of part of the mix. And I remember having my one and only experience walking through this hallway, and this thing kind of wisped around me, this feeling. And I actually I locked in, mostly because I had zero, I mean, if I'm honest, there's a fear baked into this, obviously, but I just had no interest in being fucked with. And I also really understood this notion of permission and will. And so this thing starts swirling around me, and I did something with my field that literally felt like it went through the whole planet. And I just said, no. I was like, just so you know, like, I'm not someone you're allowed to fuck with. I don't roll like that. That's not what I'm here for. Those aren't the lessons I'm trying to learn. That's not relevant to me. And I trust and appreciate you as your own sovereign energy. Do whatever you want, but don't do it around me, because I don't need it. I got plenty of other things to worry about than entities and ghosts and whatever the heck. And it seems like it worked. Literally, that was almost 15 years ago. And I have never since had any sort of like spook attempt.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. Yeah.
What people talk about, like the sleep paralysis part, right? Like an out of body, like a kind of a gateway to that state. And I wonder, like, people talk about entities standing over them all of the time. And I think like Tom DeLonge said something about like he had a realization that whenever he goes to sleep, like he's never alone, which kind of freaks me out a little bit. But And there's also William Buellman. He does a lot of discourse at Robert Monroe Institute, saying like his hypothesis is that every UAP experience or abduction experience is essentially an out of body experience. So like when you get into these out of body states or when you get into sleep paralysis, like when you hear these entities or you see these entities, like you're moving and transitioning into the out of body where everyone is like kind of interested in what you're doing. What are your thoughts? Have you had sleep paralysis?
I've had it a few times when I was younger, and maybe like once a year that'll happen, and it's usually from an awkward like we were at a party, so we stayed up late. So something about my sleep cycle just being off anyways, and you'll have that like awkward half wake up at 3:40 in the morning and something like that. But again, I'm so familiar. So in the dream space, I can once I'm lucid, I can leave the boundary of whatever scene that I'm in because it kind of only what's that word? Like in a video game, it only renders kind of the
Mm.
room you're in or the space that you're in, or as far as you can see. So if I'm in a room like with no windows, I'll just jump through one of the walls and I'm instantly in this like void space that's in between all the dreams. And that space feels very similar to sleep paralysis because there's nothing there. You don't have a body. You can move and you can kind of look. Is what it feels like, but you don't have like a neck to move or eyeballs to move. So sleep paralysis again has never been an issue for me or been like intimidating. In fact, I'd love to experience it some more, so I just had more practice there and can OBE probably easier from there, which seems to be the case. I like what what's his name, Darius Bright says that the sleep paralysis state is basically the result of your body is slowed down so much, and in order to fall asleep, then your frequency starts to go down so much that the electromagnetic field that's keeping your soul in your body, it kind of gets slow enough that the soul can leave.
Mm.
So sleep paralysis is kind of just this state where your mind is still awake, but your body is so asleep that you can't move it, at least right out the gate. Most people get freaked out by that, and I also agree with a lot of, I think Tom Campbell and Buellman, a lot of these people say too, and I would agree that in most cases, the sort of like some demon sitting on your chest or some being trying to like keep you in the paralysis is actually just your mind's way of interpreting the lack of control. And I
Mm.
think that again, I think the majority, and this might be a hot take because it seems like people are all over the place with this, but it seems like the majority of the stuff we experience in these kind of liminal spaces are your own projection for the most part. Because if you just think about how the mind works during the day, like that's all we're doing is projecting and assuming and
Yeah.
filling in gaps all day. That's
Yeah.
literally all it does.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't it do that in some really, really novel space where you're like, wait, I can't move. It's pitch black. This must be demonic. This must be bad. And to think of the only information we've ever gotten about those kinds of spaces is from movies and fantasy and all this stuff where it's dramatic on purpose. So
Shoo. Yeah, that is a hot take.
I
And the
think
way
if
that
you think about the deepest possible meditative state you could get into, which should be the safest state you could get into, right? It's very similar to sleep paralysis. Like and even the Monroe work and the um, gateway experience. That's the whole point. There, you go to a body asleep, mind awake state, so that your body can be asleep enough that you can then leave it because your mind's still awake.
Mhm.
But when you're in that state, if it's not practiced, if you have whatever demons in your own closet or skeletons in your closet or whatever, yeah, that's going to be the space that you're going to project some funny business onto yourself because you have funny business in yourself.
Mhm.
So I actually think that's a way, like someone who's maybe been robbed in their house before while they were sleeping or something, or woke up to something like that. That person would probably have to confront something different than someone who's slept like a baby every night their whole life in
Yep.
a sleep paralysis state because of that reference point in their own experience where they're going to, oh, what if this is another robber? What if somebody, so that's usually how I experience. And again, I'm happy to be as humble and nobody has any idea what's going on. But you're
Yeah.
helping me realize too just how different sometimes my answers are to a lot of these other podcasts and stuff that I hear. But also a big difference too is I'm not a big, like I've been lucid dreaming since I was 8, and you could argue that that's out of body. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't. But I have yet to be like have all these actual OBEs in the way that it seems everyone else is experiencing
Like
it.
a conventional one, like that's
Yeah.
described, right? Yeah. I mean, Tom Campbell even talks about like when you use your imagination, you're out of body because your awareness is like somewhere else,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, I do
I'm just,
practice that a lot actually, where I can all, especially in the morning when you're in that half awake kind of state, and I'll notice a place show up in my thoughts, and then I'll kind of like lean into that and go explore that. And it's like, it feels like a muscle that I'm developing, where that to me feels like astral projection,
yeah.
at least from a terminology sense, where I'm like literally projecting some sort of space and then exploring it with my astral body.
Yeah, that's so crazy, dude. You talk about these different levels and dream states, like rendering different experiences or game levels. That's what it sounds like to me. Like you're changing the environment, you're changing the game. Do you think you can meet the architect of the game, like in those dream states?
Can I meet the architect of the game?
And whoever the architect is for you, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I mean, uh, again, we're back to this. Like, I might be the architect of the games in most of those senses, which is actually why I think I can get so lucid in them, right? Or why it's so controllable, because it is literally me. And I get that experience a lot too, where often I'll be able to sense how what the experience that I'm having is directly correlated to my belief in it. Like how well I'll be able to fly has to do with
Mhm.
how confident I feel in it in that moment.
So the rules of the construct are like pretty loose in a dream state, where here the laws of physics are super tight.
Right.
What's the difference between this reality and dream state, right? Besides the construct rules, is it the same thing, the same space? Like, is it, just the law of physics here and the law of the psyche there? Like, like, I don't know, man. Sometimes I wonder, right? Like, what really is the difference?
Right. It's kind of like something clicked for me when I just a few years ago starting to study OBEs and astral projection a lot more. Somebody said, and I was just on a walk listening to a YouTube lecture or something, and this guy says, "You have to realize you're astral projecting right now."
Mm,
Like by definition. Even like Trey, you're not looking at me on your computer screen. You're having an experience of your consciousness taking in data and then projecting this sort, right? It's like we're rendering stuff real time.
yeah.
And there's even like mainstream science that talks about that, where it's almost like an algorithmic,
It's Donald
like,
Hoffman, his work. He talks
right? It's
about
like
the
the fence
computer.
in your front
Yeah.
yard doesn't look that way. It just looks how you think it looks,
Mhm.
basically. So
It's
from
like the
that perspective,
desktop icon, right? Like it has to, the
right,
computer. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes in the computer. It has to create these
exactly.
images for you to understand. It's a metaphor, right? Like it's a picture.
Yeah.
I know when I click on this, I'm going to end up here, right? It's
So
almost
so
like,
you just,
go
so
ahead.
the difference between the two, you just made me click something on like your iPhone. Looking at it normally is like the physical waking experience, but then when you hold one down so that you can like edit the screen and they're wobbling a little bit, that's like
Yeah.
the dream state. So it's like all the
Uh,
same data is there, and you could still, if you want, still click into an app and go use it or whatever, but you can also just move this app over here, or you could just
mm,
delete it, or you could, swipe it to another screen. Like it's more malleable. It feels like getting into like the code almost of this realm, but it's always in a sandbox mode. Right. So it's
mm,
not like a one for one. It's like you're projecting. Um, and again, it really depends. Like you can have a dream that's a projection of a memory of something you have done, and then you're being given the chance to relive it or make new choices in it. But I do think that what I'm experiencing right now here is mechanically the same as when I'm dreaming, because it's just what I'm aware of. But
mm.
there's something about it's like the difference of the audio book versus the movie, or reading the book versus watching it or something. It's like the data is the same, my awareness is the same, but the whatever the materials we're using are different. but really it might just mean that it's because nothing's technically physical either. So even all of this is just it's a big trick.
It
So I think
is eye
that's part of
candy.
it that makes it so fun is we really can't you can't solve the problem from the level of the problem, right? So we're literally by definition limited in our perception of it, and then we're trying to decide what it might be, which is basically
100%. So when you get into these dream states, and when you get into, you know, changing the game, being the architect, do you feel like you can change the game here? Do you feel like you can manipulate the reality to where you need to
100%,
be?
100%, and not in the way, not like you would see in a movie or something,
Like the
but more
Matrix, where
like,
he's, you know, the bullets
and
are
I teach
coming.
people about this a lot, where it's like you can, and this is what I was learning when I was in junior high. I would have recurring dreams about a girl I had a crush on, but in real life, I had never had the guts to like do anything about it. So in the dream, I would like come up with a scenario to like make her a card and like leave her a note at school. And I was like scheming these things to try to get her attention or get her to like me. And it actually built up the confidence to go do it while I was awake. I've seen people who this one guy who's like what's it called? Like a gymnast, and he was practicing a move he couldn't do in his physical body in his dreams, and he would practice it over and over and over again, and then he started getting better at it in his physical body. I think using dreams kind of as the just like in the Matrix where the I know kung fu and then they go into that dojo so they can practice sparring, you can choose to have dreams to allow you to have certain experiences, or when you're lucid in a dream you could turn it into anything. So if you're on some alien planet, you could say, no, I want to go rock climbing in Sedona. Boom, we're there, and now I'm practicing rock climbing. I had a dream just the other night. I knew I was dreaming, and I was like climbing this building, and the physics felt so real that I felt scared that I would fall off. And I'm like, dude, this is exciting. I've never
Yeah.
done that. I've never scaled a building, but I'm having as the safest possible version of that experience, but it feels even more real than if I were to do it in real life. So I freaking milked that experience, and I woke up feeling so confident and like I had grown in myself because I was having these moments where I'm like, dude, I don't know if I can get the, and like getting my way up. So I think I like how William Buhlman says too, we live in a instantly thought responsive environment in reality, meaning like out of body, like the ultimate reality. We're just thought. Here on Earth in physicality, we're still in a thought responsive environment. It's just not instant. So you can still, and that's why you can manifest shit. And if you think about things and act on them and lean into them and put the energy there, you absolutely can make stuff happen. And then I think dreams are somewhere right in the middle where it's instantly thought responsive, but your conviction has to be full.
Hmm.
So I can think like, oh, go to Sedona rock climbing, but if I don't like really feel like I can, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Or I'll have dreams where I like want to fly, and then I'm flying in this awkward way because I'm like not lucid enough to just fully like release all of that. Instead, I'm worried about doing it wrong, or I'm worried about some other thing or whatever, or how I'm going to land and things like that, which shows I'm not like fully lucid because I still have these, I'm still assuming rules from physicality that aren't really there.
That's crazy, dude. To your point, visualization, like neuroscientists have like measured this in like athletes, right? And like you don't even have to be a weightlifter, but you can envision weightlifting, and your
Right.
muscles will get bigger or stronger,
That's
right?
that Joe Dispenza's book, The Placebo. You Are the Placebo.
Yeah.
Covers that in a bunch of ways. People learning instruments, people, yeah, just a matter of my favorite one is they take a whole hotel full of like room service people, split them in half, and let half of them know that their daily work is like double the amount of recommended exercise from the government, and the other half they don't tell them that. And then over the next few months, the half that has a new perspective on the same thing they've been doing start to lose weight and get healthier, and all these things change just because their perspective changed on
It's
it.
wild, dude. So like
Change.
when you go to these different like dimensions and you're having this like physical experience of rock climbing or whatever it may be, do you come back and sometimes have like physiological effects from that?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, maybe. I
Because I
definitely
was,
like in the sense if you measured like how deeply I'm breathing or how straight I'm standing up and things like that, absolutely. I haven't like gone and done a workout in a dream and then wake up. I didn't even try
well, I
work.
mean, like you think about like a stigmata, right? Like all the famous stories surrounding that. Like I wonder if like these priests are like getting in out of body states, um, and then having an experience and then coming back or whatever, and then having these physiological changes. There's also a thought around like what if it's UAP experiences where you have like these physical effects from like the radiation of the entities or phenomena, to where like to them that they would be having like a religious experience, like a peak experience with an entity, right? Like if they see a UAP or an entity or being, like to them it would be like is this Christ, right? Like if you see that, like Chris Bledsoe sees these orbs in the sky.
Yeah.
So if you were to see like another sun at night and it's like, moving throughout the sky and it comes down to you and you're like, oh, you would think like this is God almost, right? And then you
Yeah.
have like a physiological effect from like the radiation of that. Like it
Right.
may create like scars or like things on your body that resemble like a stigmata. So like these things
Right.
to me are just like wild to think about the power of the mind, the unconscious, subconscious, whatever you want to call it, and then like our physical bodies. Like there's a
Mm.
direct relationship to that. So I mean, you
Absolutely.
might not be able to measure your muscles, right? But like, I mean, you think about Inception too. Wasn't there something? There was a movie or something where it was like, oh, it was like the Matrix. It was like Neo, like when he was in there having the battle in the
Mm.
computer, like his physical body was like spitting up blood.
There's definitely a correlation from the physical to the dream that I always find fun, where, all of a sudden in a dream, I think this just happened to me last night. I was pulling like sandy staples and paper clips out of my mouth that were all like wound up, and I woke up and my mouth was super dry. Right? Like, and it was the same sensation. So sometimes your physical body will have something, or if you have a whatever,
You're open mouth breathing, right? So yeah,
yeah, right. Or if you have like a freaking nighttime erection, that's usually what's gonna introduce a dream that has a similar theme. Or sometimes the other way around, even.
Mhm.
But it's like, yeah, your physical body will dictate. I've had like my arm fall asleep because I was laying on it funny or something, and then the dream starts to mimic that in certain ways. So there's definitely a connection between the
That's
two.
funny though. I just thought about this when you said it. Like especially when you're 16, all boys know what you're talking about when you have like a more wetish dream.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
there's the direct effect of like that experience into this reality.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. And I actually think your body is almost like it is a mental projection. And when you study things like German New Medicine, for example, and get into like how illness and disease and healing and biology really works, your body is always like a one for one of your psyche. And if you think of your psyche as like an algorithm, because it's kind of cyclical, right? And whatever data is relevant there has to do with how much you engage with it, right? If you don't like that post, you're not going to see as many posts like that. But you just got to like one, and then it's got some weight, and it can build
Yeah.
momentum. And then your body is kind of like the external, um, like your psyche is the code in the back end, and then your body is the app that you're using. So the quality of how your body is showing up and all those things like GNM really prove that a shift in your perspective can shift your physiology dramatically, and that would absolutely explain things like uh, what was the word that you use, where like the priest will get a cross or the
Yeah,
nails,
like
the ones.
oh my God, how am I forgetting that? Stigmata, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's definitely feels incredibly relevant. If you've never looked into German New Medicine, that's a huge, really, really fascinating rabbit hole where they're basically showing that almost any and every symptom that the body has a psychological component to it that also shows up in the brain as like a
Hmm.
little bundle of neurons in your brain. And you can, my buddy got his brain scanned, And this GNM practitioner knew, this guy knew nothing about him. He only looks at his brain scan and was able to say something to the effect of, like, 4 months ago, were you just abandoned by the woman you thought who would be the mother of your children?
What?
Yeah. And you've been writing a book for a year, for the last year?
Are you sure he
Shit like
wasn't like
that.
psychic or something like that? Like
No,
he's
no, it's that's how specific this system is. Like, based on how his brain looked, means that he had to have had certain psychological things going on related to these parts of the brain that are also correlated to certain symptoms and issues he's having with his body.
wow.
So the sort of algorithm of that mind-body connection is actually really well mapped out in many regards. Even things just as simple as, I used to have massive, really chronic back pain, lower back pain, which a lot of people do.
Mhm.
And you go to a chiropractor and you take anti-inflammatories and you try all the stuff. And it wasn't until I read a book called Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno, which everyone needs to know about because everyone knows someone with, chronic pain somewhere. And he makes the argument that it's actually just a distraction. And the pain is there because there's an emotion you don't feel safe to feel. So your body is essentially, creating this ploy to try to protect you from feeling something that it doesn't feel safe. So in my case, it was rage, and for many people, it's rage because that's basically one of the only societally unaccepted emotions. So I felt some rage. I did a whole rage ceremony for a day and haven't had back pain since. It's been like almost 4.5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then when I do have anger or rage about something, I freaking feel it and I feel great. And then every once in a while, I'll get the tiniest little tightness in my back, and it's just a signal to say, yo, what do you need to go rage out about? And then I do, and I'm fine. So you can start to treat your body like an actual algorithm of your psyche. It's just very confronting,
Yeah.
everything down to how well you're digesting food, or acne, or all these different things. It's total mind body connection.
Dude, I could talk to you for days, weeks. We got to do this in a part two. I want to dive deeper into some of the other things and topics, and
Yeah,
just get weird. But how can people talk, or how can they connect with you? How can they find out more about what you got?
yeah. You can just go to my website, I guess, nathanielsolace.com. I'm on Instagram. It's kind of my main social media thing, and yeah, feel free to send a DM. Say hi. I'm a real person. I won't try to sell you anything. I got plenty of things for you to buy, but I'm a good guy. But I like meeting people, and especially if you heard anything on this show where you're like, holy crap, I had a dream like that, or if you want to connect some dots with me, I'd love to hear from anybody.
Yeah, man. I think next time we dive into like how to have an out of body experience, maybe inspired through dream states. I don't know. That'd be cool. Um, but yeah, thank you for taking the time. Like, this was such a cool conversation, especially um, the idea of how evil like inspired you and helped your spiritual like unfoldment happen. So, Nathaniel, my brother, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Trey. I had a lot of fun.